An old bit of advice on writing says, write what you know. So how can someone like me, whose stories are about people on other worlds, know about such things? Where does it come from? I went to the one place that is a treasure trove of ideas, my own imagination. Imagination is amazing. Ever wonder where it comes from or what powers it? And what is inspiration? The root of that word means to inhale. To me, that means drawing in an idea, and the result is exhaling. Do we manage our inspiration and imagination by plotting and planning, or do we let it flow? We can imagine anything. In fact, if we had no imagination, where would we be? Imagination fuels not only the arts, but also the inventions that we take for granted in the world. And the things you do in your life all began as ideas inspired by your creative imagination. Someone dreamed and imagined, and all the things we have became reality. It all starts with an idea, and some ideas become stories. We love stories, to tell them and to have them told to us. Most of our lives we've related stories of what we've done and where we've been. We talk about our families, work, and dreams. We gossip, complain, and tell about our experiences. Stories can be fun, scary, rousing, or educational. They can be uplifting, mesmerizing, or silly, and a great way to pass the time. Our storytelling goes back to the very beginning. Imagine, if you will, sitting around the fire of a long ago time, listening to the noises in the dark. What would you have talked about then? It might have been about your hunting skills that bagged the beast that is feeding your tribe, or how the food stores are being stocked up for the coming winter. Maybe you're the shaman, and the night provides a way to explain the mysteries of the world. Nothing's really changed. We still do this, except our ways of sharing are different and not as intimate. If you are on Twitter or Facebook, you share with lots of people all at once. I've told my grandkids that their electronic devices are eating their brains. No wonder zombies are so popular these days. But whether we like the way stories are transmitted or not, we still tell them. As natural storytellers, tales come to us as easily as breathing. We illustrate and teach with stories. Some of us are better at it than others, of course, but we all do it. We're very visual and need to see it in order to understand, whether it's a word picture or a graphic representation. And it isn't just children who love storybooks. Great art is as much an outgrowth of our storytelling as is writing, and all forms of entertainment, from movies to rock, rap, and opera. If we can just see it, we'll understand it. Music, literature, and art evoke emotions, and with the emotions come mental pictures and memories. They all become a part of who and what we are. Observing, talking, and finding out about things are what we do. We find it when we look. We know it when we see it. We've heard all the stories there are, but we keep listening. I've attended a lot of author fairs and book signings where I am often asked about writing. One thing I always tell people is, everyone has a story. And some people think that that means the story of their own life. Great. Our own lives often include extraordinary events. I've often heard, too, that as people write memoirs, the more they think about the past, the more they recall. So whether your story is fictional or not, it reflects you. One important aspect of storytelling is that it helps us sort through experiences that may have been traumatic, whether the story is fiction or nonfiction. We have to understand our emotional response to events in our lives. Pain, anger, fear, or even happiness, whatever you feel, is your gift of life. Acknowledge it, embrace it, go into and not away from it. A long time ago, I recognized that difficult situations would one day make great stories. Always tell yourself the truth and never tell yourself a story you can't live with. Self-delusion becomes a labyrinth of deception as you continue to cover your untruths. Ultimately, you get lost in that maze, forgetting which story is true. So tell your story, but never ever get so caught up in it that you forget to experience your life. Think of problems as occasions to learn the lesson they provide. Discomfort is sometimes nature's way of offering up a learning experience. Fantasy writer Neil Gaiman said, "Now go and make interesting mistakes. Make amazing mistakes. Make glorious and fantastic mistakes. Break the rules. Leave the world more interesting for your being here." At a book fair some years ago, I was sitting next to a mystery writer when a young man came up to the table and said he was interested in writing and wanted some information. The mystery writer said to me, "Don't talk to him. We don't need any more competition." I ignored that bit of unwanted advice and seized the opportunity to talk about my favorite subject without a second thought. If anything is rewarding, it's being able to pass on some of your expertise, however little that may be. If you gave the same story idea to every writer, we would all write a different story because we write through our own lens. There's no other possible way to do it. And by the way, that young man who is asking for information has now written 3 books. Stephen King once said he tried to write stories without a horror twist and found he couldn't. That's just how the stories wrote themselves, and like Stephen King, I don't plot. An idea or wisp of one will grab me, and I go after it without knowing where it's going or where we'll end up. I have to trust that the story will fit together in the end. When it works, it's great. I don't like to take credit for the results because I've simply gotten out of my own way. I get into the zone and just write, allowing my inner self to tell the story. I can't write contrary to who I am. Whoever I am is how and what I write. At another author's event, I overheard a successful writer tell a new writer, "If you don't plot your book, it will be awful." That's not the word he used, but that's the word I'm using. I know without a doubt that some of us can write quite well without a plot. We each have our own process, and it produces a wide range of stories and ideas from which to choose. When my first book was published, I had to assign it to a category. I've spent a lot of my life trying not to put things and people into boxes. But this time, it was for a good reason, to help people find the type of book they like to read. My books are listed under the categories sci-fi, fantasy, or metaphysical, sometimes all 3. But I have yet to write about a dragon, except in a short story. My 3rd book has a spaceship in it, but it's more about people than hardware. In the book, The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot, the author likens life to a hologram. If a holographic image is cut up, each piece then contains the entire image. Imagine that as infinite as the physical universe is, that there is infinitely more that's unexplored. This is a realm that we can't see, but we love to talk about. And that's why there are science fiction and fantasy writers. My first book was originally published in 2005, and I was really happy about it. Ecstatic. When the second book came out, I wasn't very pleased with the publisher. Now the first, as I said, is live on Amazon to be downloaded for Kindle. I prefer paper books, but this way I can reach a wider readership. And because my contracts with the first publisher are up, I now have complete control over the contents of my books. The second and third books are in the chute being formatted, and I'm still writing the fourth. I designed the book covers for my first 2 books, and I'm working on the next 2 as well. Mostly, I sit in front of my computer and write, and after that's done, there are other things to contend with, such as marketing. So what else do you need to be a writer? You need an idea and some way of capturing it, whether it's a pencil on paper or on a computer. And remember that all the books written before the 1980s were written on typewriters or in longhand. But those are just the tools. The most important one is you. I write the kind of books I like to read. I don't write to win a popularity contest, even though the majority of the people that I've talked to who have written my books give them rave reviews. I write because I love to and because I have something to say. Some readers like my books for the adventure, while others have found a particular concept to be intriguing. A reviewer in New Connections online magazine found the idea of nonlinear time to be significant for him. I write about paradoxes in my novels, and I think it's great fun. Above all, my books are about people. I begin with a germ of an idea, and once I name the characters, they come to life, and I let them lead the way. But isn't that how life is? We let our own character develop, and we see where our own story takes us. People have told me that they dream about my characters because they're so real. When I'm working in that zone, I don't think about what I'm writing, and that allows the story to unfold. Sometimes I'm surprised how it turns out. Well, usually I'm surprised how it turns out, because without some detail that I put in, and that wasn't planned, in the end it wouldn't have come together at all. I write about how people deal with the challenges that arise. True, those books are set in other worlds, but the characters are just like us. They go through rough spots and have to figure out what to do about it. They love, strive, and in the process change. Change is an imperative for survival when adapting to new situations, whether in fiction or real life. What the characters do in each situation is what I find fascinating. The stories and characters are unpredictable because people and life don't always do what we expect. And I don't believe in villains, because I truly believe that everyone deserves to be loved. I've written bad guys into my stories, and they usually end up being rehabilitated. My first book, Amalie Into the Light, is about Jerica Miller, who walks into a light on a cold, dark night. She finds herself in another world where she's told that she's not an ordinary woman. Through most of the book, she's in complete denial to her true identity. In the end, she finally trusts herself enough to solve a mystery, but she's still not convinced of her authentic nature. This was written while we were building our house in the country. We lived in Salem, and I drive back and forth from the building site, and sometimes it was after dark. The story starts as the main character, Jerica, is driving alone in the country in the dark. I just spun that idea out. At the time, I thought I was writing a short story, but this character wanted more. After 100 pages or so, I realized I was writing a novel. In Discontinuity, Volume 2 of Amalie, Jerica finally discovers her true identity when she finds herself disembodied on a dying planet. Ultimately, she achieves her own fulfillment and helps to revive that world. The third book in the series is called Shoals of Time, and this follows the children of the characters in the first 2 books. This is where the spaceship comes in. They have to learn how to make it work without any instructions. The fourth, and I think it's the last in the series, is called Zator, the Visitors, and I'm still writing it, so I have no idea what's going to happen. Adventure, mystery, love, and metaphysics are some of the themes in my books. I've been a lifelong observer. As a young child, I was so shy that my mother's friends thought I was unable to speak. I was quietly taking note of my surroundings, details of life, people's actions and reactions, and how things worked. We're bombarded all the time with details, noises, people, and events. To protect ourselves, we filter the input and go about our lives on automatic. We don't see, hear, or smell any more than is necessary. We focus only on a small portion of life to avoid seeing what's around us. If you aspire to writing or any other art form, you have to be open and aware. I watched and studied people, something that helped me in drawing and in writing. There's so much to take in, but you are the doorkeeper. Do you let it in, or do you shut the door tightly? I've been telling stories since before I could read and write. When I was very young, I would scribble on a piece of paper and then tell my mom the story. I wrote my first real story around age 9 and have been writing ever since. I also drew on every piece of paper I put my hands on, and usually the drawings were illustrations of a picture of a story in my head. I didn't begin writing my first novel until 1999. I've studied many philosophies and cultures, science, religions, and metaphysics, and have a wide range of interests. I've never stopped learning, and I mean to keep on doing so until the end, whatever and whenever that may be. I've learned that the characters in my books come to life only after I name them, and when I stand back and allow them to develop, they do whatever they seem led to do. Words have the power to move, inspire, entertain, and motivate. There is an implicit interaction between writer and reader. I can put the words to paper, but until you read them, they lay dormant. It is your life and experience that brings them to full flower. The more you bring of your own life into reading, the more you get out of it. It is a collaborative and intimate contract between author and writer. Reader. When you read a book, it invites you on an adventure. In my stories, you get to go to new worlds where time is unreliable and what you wish for is what you get. Read them from whatever perspective you wish. As a diversion, a love story, adventure, mystery, or at a deeper level, where answers may ignite your imagination to ask more questions. Storytelling is fun. Sometimes it's difficult, and other times it's rewarding. Let your mind wander. In that place where imagination dwells, you'll find wonders and riches beyond your conscious mind. So what's your story? Tell it any way you want, but make it a good one. Thank you.